This morning, we are hearing some of the hoax calls that caused a really big panic at more than a dozen schools across Colorado this week. We should warn you, these calls include the sound of gunshots and a reminder there was no real threat and nobody was hurt.
Durango La Plata Communication Center.
Hello, I'm about to go in Durango High School. I have an AR-15 and pipe bombs with me. I'm gonna shoot every kid I see in that school. I'm walking in now.
Can you just talk to me for a second?
Even though we know that it wasn't real, it still is disturbing. So that call came into Durango. A call into Canyon City followed a similar script and also mentioned pipe bombs. A former FBI agent told us the caller's digital footprint is probably massive. Investigators, though, will have to start with call data in Colorado and trace it back through an untold number of IP addresses. Now, individuals who report false threats can face some serious legal consequences, especially here in Colorado. And here to explain exactly what those consequences are is our 9 News legal analyst, Whitney Traylor. Whitney, good morning.
Good morning, Jordan. Good to see you.
Good to see you as well.
Right.
Let's start off with a vocabulary word, first of all, because one thing we've heard a lot recently is the word swatting. What exactly does that mean?
Right, and swatting is a new phenomenon. Essentially, it's calling law enforcement and letting them know or alleging that there's some emergency and actually giving an actual address. That's what swatting is, and we passed a law in Colorado in 2018 addressing that. So swatting is something that's picked up around the country. For
anybody who does happen to violate that law or who engages in this swatting, what exactly are the consequences for them?
Well, it depends. So if someone is injured, it actually is a class 4 felony. If someone is killed, it's a class 3. So someone could be facing, more than 18 months in jail for this. And you just heard that. I think, and I understand, if there were jokes, if there were young people doing this seemed calculated and more maybe than a joke, but the reality is these young people, if they don't think about this, the consequences are severe. You mentioned in the lead-in that no one was hurt. I would put a parentheses and say no one was physically hurt.
Right.
Because even hearing that call, if I was a student at that school, knowing how frequent we have these mass shootings, the psychological impact, the ability to go back into school, to feel comfortable, to feel safe, that's going to be, this is, PTSD type stuff. So the psychological effects are severe as well.
You mentioned the fact that you clarified that this wasn't a joke, but even if it was a joke, that is considered swatting. This is not a funny situation for a lot of people, and a lot of resources and money are put into these, even if you're joking, so you can be in serious trouble for that. Now, you mentioned 18 months,
yes,
as a punishment there. A lot of people wonder, though, should that even be harsher?
Yeah, and some people are wondering that, but the problem is actually trying to catch these people, and that's a major issue because of technology. They have burner phones, and from gaming options, there's just all these ways to make these calls without really getting caught. And a lot of the times, it's actually a good Samaritan. So the person either bragging about it, that they did it, or they're going to do it, that kind of thing, and then a good Samaritan steps in. That seems to be how people ultimately get caught more frequently than not.
What could, you mentioned the fact that nobody was physically harmed.
Yes.
Could there be legal consequences for somebody saying, but I was mentally harmed, my peace was disturbed?
Oh, I would be surprised if there weren't civil lawsuits. If they found the person, they caught them, they could prosecute them criminally, as we mentioned, but then some of these other students or parents who were subjected to this could also assert a number of different claims against them on the civil side. And I would not be surprised if that happened, if they ultimately catch them. Right. In this case, it may be somebody from out of the country. We don't know, there was somebody with an accent. It sounded like there were some similar traits in some of the calls, but of course the investigation's still going on.
This happened in 17 different schools that we know of across our state. How was the response to this? We know in Boulder, they reacted within 3 minutes they were on campus.
Well, and I think that's the other side of the coin for the students who feel that psychological, that emotional fear. In some sense, I think this was a good thing because it was a fire drill of sorts. And if I'm a student, I'm also saying, okay, Law enforcement was here within 3 minutes. They locked the school down. The protocols were in place. So in a way, it's a fire drill. That's the good side of it. And I did review how the different schools responded, and some of them quickly realized that it was not a legitimate threat and resumed things. Other schools shut down very quickly. But overall, I think the schools responded well, and I think that's a positive takeaway for parents and students is that, okay, now we know, everybody's in action if this happens.
We have a little bit of assurance there.
I think so.
All right,
Yeah.
Whitney, we appreciate you coming in.
Sure thing.
Thank
Good
you,
to
my
be here.
friend.
All right.
Let's get